welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Maryland Drawing Show. Welcome to another episode of, if I can find it here, and of course I can't find it when I want it. Anyway, welcome to another episode of the art of muscle movement. Now I'm determined. Here we go. Welcome to another episode of the art of muscle movement. How is everyone doing today? Are you having a nice day? I hope you're having a nice day wherever you are in the world. Uh-oh. Oh dear. Okay. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about wrist and forearm movement. Yesterday we kind of went over the basics of using finger movement. Today we're going to talk about wrist and arm movement. We're going to take out a piece of paper, make sure that we're live. Make sure that we're live. Very good. Okay, so hopefully things will go smoothly. So, wrist movement, we're using hinge and rotational movement, and we're using our fingers and our wrists and even our metacarpals just a little bit to create just a little bit of flexion, because when you make your hands flat and they're at rest, they're in kind of this shape. But when you go to make a far away gesture, the shape changes. You can see it's clearly more obtuse than it was before. And so, when you're just writing normally, it's kind of flat, more flat. So you want to make sure that instead of having to bend your hand into weird angles to get way over yonder, but you maybe put a little bit of hinge movement in your wrist, a little bit of rotational movement in your wrist to get that flourish. So forearm and wrist movement are for making like medium-sized letters. When you're using just finger movement, you can only make such a big letter. I would say 2 wide lined spaces. 2 wide lined spaces. But when you use wrist and forearm movement, you're going to plant your arm, the fatty part of your arm, on the table, and you're going to be able to use this type of a motion when you're making flourishes or larger calligraphy. So, and you might even get a little bit of shoulder movement in there too. Just a little bit of rotational shoulder movement. And you can make quite large shoulder, wrist, and lower arm movement. Okay, and this is 3 spaces wide, so you can really get in there and make bigger lettering. Really using all of these muscles right up in here, all of these muscles, to make bigger letters. You can see just then when I did my flourish, I was at my most extended point. I was at my most extended point right there. Couldn't possibly have gone any further. That's the point when you know that you need to stop, pick up your arm, move it over, plop it down, and continue on. This is where we'll get into, tomorrow we will get into whole arm movement. So, when you're making your lettering, we're going to mark off our X height, and we're going to start upstrokes, upstroke, upstroke, downstroke, 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 overturn, 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 underturn, 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 oops, underturn, compound curve, compound curve, drop 3 down, 1, 2, 3, mark off our X height. Now, because this is a 3-letter high, we're going to start the ascending stem loop from the middle of the space, and we're going to come up all the way up to the second ascender, all the way down to the baseline, and then square off. Up all the way to the base, all the way to the header, second ascender. So this would be the first ascender, and this would be the second ascender. So from the first ascender, we're going to come up, we're going to make a little loop, and then come down, straight line, press, and then square off. It takes a lot of movement in our wrist and arm movement, whereas yesterday we were making them this big and only using finger movement. So, when you make bigger letters, you have to move your arm and wrist more. And sometimes you would need to use your forearm a little bit. So, just take into consideration. Okay. Now the descenders are the same way, only we're going the opposite direction. So here's the excite, baseline, first ascender, second descender. So we're going to come, do a cross over, pull down, let up, hit that second descender and come back up. So cross, down, let up, and up. And that takes a good chunk of wrist movement in order to be able to do that. So we are contracting our forearm muscle and pulling the pen down and making an arch. You should feel a clear arch coming here. Your wrist should not be on the paper, but these sides of your fingers should be on the paper to lift the pen in order to get that all the way down to the baseline. You're gonna have to. You'll figure it out once you figure out where your limits are, where you are on the page. Over here, it might seem more difficult. Let's see. Let's drop 3 down. Mark off our X height. And you want to, if we're starting at the X height, and you're already at this, you already have like an arch going on with your wrist. What you're gonna do is you're gonna either 1, move the paper, 2, move yourself, or 3, do both. Move your paper and the self, so that way you have more room. Your wrist should be straight when you start a movement coming down, and your wrist should be slightly bent if you're going up. So it'll take kind of a long time in order to figure out, hey, I need to move my wrist down here because I'm going to be coming up, or I need to move my wrist way up here because I'm going to be coming down. So, but if you're coming up then down, the best advice that I can give you is extend your pen as far away from you extend your pen as far away from you and touch the top of where you need to go. So for here, I want to go up to the very top, and that is my extension. That is as far away as that I can make my lettering go, right? So I'm gonna start. Oops, wait. This is where I need to go. So I'm gonna start here, and I want to make sure that I have enough room to go all the way up to the top. So I'm going to move my paper just ever so slightly, and you'll find that if you put your paper on a clipboard, you'll be able to move the clipboard easier than you will be having to lick your fingers all the time just to move the paper around, because paper is really smooth, or unless you use a finger cot to give you some traction. But clipboards are great because you can just pick it up and move it about, and then you can keep your arm pretty much in the same space. Now, one thing that I really want to talk about just quickly is the position of your body. If you're hunched over when you're doing your calligraphy, try and sit up nicely so that way when you're not hunched over all the time. And if you find that you're hunched over too much and like you can't get a grip, maybe lower your seat just a little tiny bit. And if you don't have a way to lower your seat, then maybe find a different surface so that way you can bring it up just a little bit. You should be comfortable and you shouldn't be bent over. You should be sitting up and able to be moved about so that your elbow doesn't smack the edge of the table. That's one of the most important things I can't stress enough, is that you should be sitting upright, and when you go to do a flourish, you should be able to touch your forehead with your pen and go all the way down to the page without smacking your elbow on the table, because there's a GDSOB moment waiting to happen. So because I know that I'm going to make an ascending stem loop all the way up here. I extend my muscles as far away from me as I can, and I know that that is as far as I can go. And so I will start at the top of the first ascender, and I will come up, extend my muscles all the way out, and then I will come all the way down to the baseline and square off. And you'll see that I went from all the way out here to all the way in here. And the muscle, there's like a little tiny space right underneath where my hand was resting on the table. And you could either rock the entire your hand on top of the flat side of your pinky, which is what I do sometimes when you're trying to get a letter to, if you have to curl your hand. Or what I will do is I will lift the fat part of my muscle on my arm, and I will use my whole arm movement to pull the rest of the letter down. So there's many different ways that you can make the same letter with the same amount of space. Alright, so let's take a look. Overturn, say up, down, over, under, compound curve, ascending stem loop, descending stem loop. The oval, we're going to use 1.5 spaces. Start. Let's see, we know that this is about how big our oval can be. And an oval can be up to that big, just using our muscle movements in our wrist, in our forearm, and in our fingers. You're not really moving too many fingers when you're making sizes this big. Just enough to rock your pen from like there to there. And that's not a whole lot. Especially when you use your muscle movements and your wrist movements. And then ovals are just up, over, around, down, and in. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Ascending oval. So these are the 7 basic strokes. 5, 6, 8 basic strokes. And let's mark 2 down. Let's do some capital strokes. Now, when doing capital letters, you need 3 spaces. 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. So you're gonna test. You're probably gonna go through a ream of paper. So choose acceptance and go down to your nearest CVS and buy a ream of CVS caliber paper, or you can get white printer paper. We're going to be working with printer paper next, so I'm going to show you how to deal with that. This is where things start to get interesting. Oh no, what happened to the lines? I can't see my lines. So you're going to take it. This is where the pencil comes in that we talked about. We're going to need. And a ruler. We're going to need some sort of ruler. Now, if you measure your page and it's a certain amount. You want a 3 to 1 space. 3 to 1.5 space. So if you want to make a letter and you want it to be 9 inches tall, it needs to be at least 3 inches wide. So you can kind of mark off just little tiny dots how big you want your letter to be. Okay, and the way to find the X height is you're going to measure up 3 spaces from the bottom. That's 6 inches, a 6. So you're going to come from all the way up. That's whole arm movement right there. Using all of your muscles to make that. That's a very tall A. Whew. Not the best A. Of course, if you want to make them a little bigger, you can make them a little bigger or a little smaller. And if you have to go in and back fill your letter, that's okay too. The whole point of these exercises is to get your muscles moving. So we're going to do some kind of practice ovals with our forearm, with our wrist movement and our hand movement, wrist and hand movement. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. This is just getting your hand moving. Showing your hand and wrist where the max is. And you'll notice that there may be a flat spot here. You can clearly see the flat spot. So if you're making a flat spot and it's going like this, that means that you're going too far. You can clearly see the flat spot. So make your ovals smaller, just using your wrist movement. Make them big. Make them small. Get your arm moving. Make them fast. The faster that you go, the less time you will have to think about that flat shape. This might seem anti-productive, but I promise you, once you get the hang of it, you will see that those flat spots go away. It's going to seem very counterproductive for a little while, but after a while, you'll have your arm will be warmed up, and you should just be able to come in and go This is over 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. That is the most that my wrist can do at that point. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you feel like you're going out of control, try a pencil. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe try 6 tall. Oh, that might be too far. Ooh, that's big. I feel like I'm out of control. You can kind of see I'm all over the place. The other thing that you could try is going very small muscle movements very quickly. Now, when you do these exercises, you shouldn't be doing this. You see what happened? I didn't move my arm. And then I got a mess. So what you need to do is continuously lift your arm up, just so that you can feel the fat bit of your arm dragging on the table, and you can kind of keep your wrist locked but move your fingers up and down, and use your shoulder muscle to bring your arm up just the tiniest bit off of the table, so you can have a little bit of stability. So, like this. Maybe change direction. The next thing that we're going to talk about is whole arm movement. Itchy. Whole arm movement is using all of the muscles of the arm. So we're going to use mostly the upper arm movement. Instead of using the forearm and the metacarpal muscles, we're going to lock this in place. We're going to hold our pen so that way it's at a certain angle so that it just glides on the page. Now, if you're having trouble just gliding your pen on the page, that's okay. So it's going to take a little bit of practice. So your whole arm is going to float above the page, and only the very tip of your pinky is going to be touching the page. You should be able to rest your pinky on the page like that. Okay? And when you use your whole arm muscles, you're not putting your arm on the desk, you're not hunched over, you're just kind of sitting up, and you can move pretty much all the way around the page. So just okay. This is your playground right there. I'm going to use a blue piece of paper. Now, when you're using whole arm movement, that is where flourishing comes in. Flourishing is an extension of a letter that makes it more beautiful. Now, a lot of people practice these types of drills. Making the infinity symbol, because this is the key to most flourishes. So words like that can be flourished with an infinity symbol. See? Words like they can be flourished with an infinity symbol. It's one of the most common. You can even go from up, infinity symbol. One of my favorite things to do is use it to cross T's. infinity symbol. All of these are based on ovals. There's an oval here, an oval here, an oval here, an oval here, 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 and here. So if you can make your flourishes with ovals, you'll find that they are much more prettier. This is where whole arm movement comes into play. So, using your whole arm to move about the page to make a really pretty word like, well, write the word Alice. See how I used my whole arm when I made that flourish? And now I'm using arm movement, a little bit of wrist movement. Move my arm again. Move my arm again, reposition my paper. A little bit of forearm. A little bit of finger movement. And right here is where I'm deciding where I'm going to go with this. I can either go down, use whole arm movement, or I can go up and use a little bit of forearm and whole arm movement. But I think I'm going to go down, so, or you can come to the baseline, come up, and then right about here you lock your hand and just use your whole arm movement. Okay, so combination movement is probably the most easiest thing to explain, because your whole arm is just moving however it think that it should to do what it needs to do. So whole arm movement, wrist movement, finger movement, finger movement, finger movement, move my wrist, finger movement. Now I'm going to make a big flourish here, so I'm going to lock my wrist, and I'm going to come up, over, around, and through. And then I'm going to come back, down, finger movement, a little bit of wrist movement, till your eye. And I'm going to do a big flourish down here too. So you want to kind of plan it out as you're thinking about, okay, well, I want my whole arm to do all of this, and I want it to look really pretty. So the best advice I can give you is try and plan it out before you execute it, with just hovering over it. And then execute. You see how I use my whole arm to do that? And then finger movement. Whole arm movement. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can use your whole arm and finger movement to make different letters, words, and the such. Okay, so the last part of this whole bit is understanding where your limits are. And so when you're making your lettering, you're going to try and use up this whole space, and I want you to assign it a baseline relative to how your name is spelled. We're going to write your name. You're going to write your name. And we're going to flourish it. So, my name has a descender in it. I want a descender's amount of space plus a little bit for a big flourish, just like I showed you. And I also want enough atop of my name so I can do a little bit of flourishing up here. And I want room on the sides of my name so I can do a beginning intro flourish and an exit flourish. Now, before you listen to anybody else, there is such thing as too many loops. Okay, so keep it as simple as possible and try and use all of your muscles. So, my name is going to go about this big, and it's going to go about this big, about that big. So I'm going to kind of mark off how far I want it to go, and I want to have just a little bit of room on each side to be able to move. Okay, and then here is my baseline. And see, the pen skipped a little right here, so I'm just going to go back and go right over it. And it doesn't matter if it's not perfect. Now here's where you need to decide how big you want your letters to be. So if this is, I don't even know how big this is. Here's my other ruler because it's easier to tell. If my letters are 6.5 inches high, that means they're going to be about 4 inches. My minuscule letters are going to be about 2 inches big. So okay, something like that. Now your name probably isn't going to be as tall as mine or wide as mine, and you can make this as big as small or small as you want. But this is the end goal. Learning how to use all of your muscles in order to make beautiful flourished calligraphy. And of course I did mess up here. And it may take you a little while to get it down, but I promise you that if you give this a little bit of try, you will find that eventually, after lots of practice and doing the basic strokes really big, that you will be able to write really big. Big upstrokes, big downstrokes, using your whole arm to make the strokes by just raising your arm off of the table. Okay. Okay, so what did we talk about today? We talked about arm movement, whole arm movement, flourishing, and really big letters. Tomorrow we will talk about project ideas, and we will talk about how you can participate, how you can use your calligraphy in an everyday setting. Okie dokie. So, I don't know if that made any sense. I'm going to have to rewatch this. And if you find that I'm rambling, yes, I do ramble a lot. But I try and make as much sense in the smallest amount of time as possible. That leaves lots of room for you to play. And that is what's fun about this entire project, is that if you're not having fun, maybe stop and go get some tea or something. Do something else. Because if you're not having fun with the process, then it probably isn't for you at that moment. Take a moment, go do something else, but come back. Try again. Keep trying. Keep writing. Keep writing. Keep practicing. Use whatever tools you have. If you have a brush pen, use a brush pen. I'm going to use a blue piece of paper because I think it might go over better on blue. So, this is a Archer and Olive calligraph paper. Calligraph. Keep writing. Now, this isn't good, but it's a start. You can start. Keep writing. Keep trying different things. Keep doing. Tomorrow we will talk about projects that you can be a participant in if you want to. And I will show you how you can make a little bit of money on the side in about a week. So, like I said, you're going to go through a buttload of paper. But it's worth it. Duh. Sometimes I mess up because I'm saying the strokes in my head, and I'm not actually paying attention to the way that the words are spelled. Anybody else do that?
This is a reminder. 1 p.m.
Huge thanks goes out to all of my supporters. Without you guys, I couldn't do this. So that's all I have for today. I want to thank you all for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. I hope that you learned something. Please share this video with your friends. Follow me on social media. Like, comment, subscribe. Ring the little bell. Make sure it's set to all, so when I upload new content, YouTube notifies you. And I will be back very soon with another video. So take care until then. Okay, love you. Bye. Have a great day.